Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another recap review of at this point, I'm gonna say the hit MGM Plus series, The Emperor of Ocean Park. It's your guy here, Lucas, with my main man here, Nate Jeer.
What up?
We are here to get into the episode of flashbacks, episode 8 of Emperor of Ocean Park. So first, how you doing this evening, man?
Good. What an episode. We got an episode that strictly focuses on the judge. So that means, in case you've just been unalive for the last decade, you're about to see Forrest Whitaker at his best. And we get a lot of explanation with his relationship with Unc. I think, is it safe to say we know what the arrangements are now? I think it was briefly mentioned what they were. I think they kind of mentioned what they were when I don't know. We'll talk about it.
They kind of breeze through stuff, but they don't necessarily. To me, they didn't directly. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
Directly say what they are, but what we did learn is Miss Clarice Garland is the true gangster of the family here.
1000%.
Man, that one powerful scene close to the end of the episode, that there, them two sparring back and forth with each other in this episode is what made this episode great. Yeah. Especially when it was either a disagreement or her seeing things from a different perspective than the judge did. But let's jump right back into it.
Straight bullets to the Turk folks, because they got religion looking real suspicious right now. Like y'all the things that are told in that sanctuary, I ain't seen any of it apply. But my man was up there just preaching up a storm, wasn't he?
Hey, all we was missing was somebody in the back saying, "Let him use you. Let him use." That's all we missing. But we open up at Abigail's service here, and we just see just how much of a daze that the judge is in. And then we get one of the key running things to this episode, and that is him completely just breaking down and drinking as many of his sorrows away as humanly possible. Just what did you think about opening this up this way? We see from the service to him on the phone repeatedly with the police, like, hey, y'all have to know something, and down to him finishing, and that had to be a fifth. And I'm assuming he got money, so I'm not going to say he was drinking E&J, but whatever he was drinking, he downed that fifth, downed another fifth, then downed another fifth.
Yeah,
my man. What do you think about just showing the spiral that the judge goes down here?
We used to call it in college the Mike Jack, when you drink the black and the white. He definitely put down 2 bottles of Chavis. and who knows what the white was, but he put 2. He put 2.
Am I saying it right?
Nah, he did not put some. I said college. I didn't tell you to refer to what we were doing in college. We had a good display of what grief is, and and how he was handling grief. And this was really the start of a terrible trajectory that we was going to see him on. And sad to say, this is some people's out. This is how some people cope with loss. And why he looked to the cops to do their job, to bring justice, and folks have been in these situations before where they're sworn to protect and serve, and could they do that? They couldn't bring his baby girl back, but there was a measure of justice. This man stands for justice, and to see the system fail in front of him in the way that it did, I mean, it only but surely turned him to the only thing that he knew. And he was always a little bit of a drinker, because he always had a nice little
bar set up.
So this just turned him to really put it down to cope with his emotions. And it's sad to see him go down like that. At the end of the day, if this is the first episode and this is the first time we were introduced to him, we have to understand this was a man of dignity. This is a man of the highest prestige. He was respected. He spoke at 2 people's funerals. And I don't know about you all, but when I go to funerals, they say close family, 5 minutes. And my man got a sermon up there, and he's no preacher. So just to tell you that, like, just that level of impact and influence that he has to his community, to see him go down this path just lets you know, like, he's, as we like to say, down bad. So it was a great setup to establish that pretty early for everything that was to come later on.
I'll challenge you on one thing. Do you think it's the police letting him down, or do you think it's him wanting instant justice?
It's the same.
Technically, we're from a police perspective. I mean, once we look at the rest of the episode, they hid the evidence extremely well, but he wasn't accustomed to the power that people have being wielded against him. And because of it, that's what threw him off more than anything else. Because if it's just a regular hit and run, clearly they'd have easily found it. But later on in the episode, when we found the lengths that other powerful people go to cover up a crime, which I think ran parallel to the episode, because it's literally the exact same thing he does in this episode, is the thing that took so long for them to find out exactly what happened to his daughter. I thought that was a very interesting parallel to run there. Because again, you're dealing with senators, you're dealing with powerful people in Martha's Vineyard with money. They can hide anything. And he's blaming the police for it, but then he turns around, kills 2 kids, does the exact same thing, and the police are still lost. Like, hey, there's no evidence here.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I firmly agree with your rebuttal there, but I also think too, I think in this case that with him being the judge, I think because where he stands at in terms of the law, he gets instant results. So obviously the law sometimes is looked as a very linear thing. And I think as us, as either if you've ever been a victim or something, or if you, I mean, whether you've been a victim of something, that something happened directly with you, or you've been sort of a victim from a like an observation standpoint where you're just like, hey, somebody broke into my car. Y'all not gonna use forensics, like you're not like who did this, you know, or it's those type of things. But you know, understanding the process, like, hey, come down, do the paperwork, we'll put out a blah blah blah, et cetera, et cetera. Even missing persons cases where people are just like, this person comes home every day at this time. I don't need to wait 24 hours for this. Put this out. You know what I mean? I know something's wrong, you know. So it's him. I think it's one of those type of things where he's just like, I make changes or impacts when something hits my desk instantly. You all do your job, find out who did this right now so we can do what we have to do. He's not waiting for the process. He wants this to be an instant result. So I think that's a measure of him and his disappointment, because he's like, this isn't the way how I see things to be in the law. And whether you just take the law aspect of it or not, he wants instant results because that's what he's used to and what he does day to day. I mean, we personally talk about this all the time as being like managers and running the outlets, that like when we want to do things and what we stand for, we have a certain expectation of things. Essentially, we got to kind of check ourselves because like we're in the position that we are because we're the ones that can do it. Everybody's not going to be able to do that. That's why some people are there, some people are here. You know what I mean? And you can't help that at times. So again, very relatable writing. And I mean, like the writing is obviously for entertainment purposes, but there's so many things personally that you can start to say, like, I see why the judge is responding the way he was. I see why his mind is in the place that it is. I see why he hit rock bottom because of this and that. Like they're making sure that there's no rock unturned in terms of understanding where these characters are at.
Exactly, especially for this episode, because this is the first linear episode of the series. So
in terms of no flashbacks or anything,
no flashbacks. It's a straightforward story here. So we'll treat it that way by like just cobbling some of the things up together, because all of them run into each other. In the following couple of scenes, first we get the judge going back to work immediately. He gave himself 2 weeks after his daughter was murdered to go back to work. What we see the concern from Ms. Garland about him going back to work is saying, you need to take a break. You haven't processed anything yet. And we see him brush it off. But the moment we see him brush it off, we see him behind the bench, drinking straight alcohol out of a water bottle and not being able to cope or do anything else, down to falling asleep on the bench. What did you just think about the parallels of her telling him he needs a break And we see him doing something, as you say, a distinguished person like himself would never do. And that is drinking behind the bench and just completely ignoring the case in front of him.
Yeah, I would also say, like, you kind of see, in a sense, and I, we coined the word generational trauma, but like in this case, like the cycle, we see what he's done, but we've also seen the kids do this as well. Not the drinking aspect, but because none of them let the process anything, they all went back to work.
Except for Addison.
Addison, but everybody else went right back to work. So you see, like, where that comes from, which again, great storytelling, because we want to believe that this is actually a family here. But you know, the wife, the mother, the true anchor of the family.
Yes.
What she says holds weight. Much like how we said what the judge says to the kids hold weight. Well, he takes directions from a boss too. So her making that observation was spot on. And I think, I don't know if I said it on the show, but I know I said this recently, but sometimes it's not really the message, it's the messenger. Yep. And in this case, it's definitely the message. And it's absolutely the messenger, but he decided to kind of split that into halves. Like, he had commentary from his other works, and obviously falling asleep on the bench, and obviously whoever it was, the lawyer drawing attention to that, and obviously he being pulled to the side about that, obviously them telling him the same thing, but then the wife coming back and kind of resetting it again, letting them know like this is unacceptable. You have to take care of yourself, even to the point where she thought he was dead not that long ago. Remember, coming into there, seeing him completely passed out. So I think there's this a lot of him trying to shift through and work through not only the grieving process, but the amount of stress and pressure that he's under, because he still is expected, if you are going to go back to work, to withhold his duties, but also maintain the household and take care of his wife, who's grieving in a completely different way.
As a mom who's lost her baby. Like, it's a different type of grief. I mean, both of them are parents, both of them love their children, but it's different from when you carry a child for 9 months and then you lose that child so early. But again, next up, we did have the meeting behind chambers with the other judges. He pinpoints like, hey, you shouldn't be here. Again, that's a running theme here. You should not be here. We understand what's going on here. But then him pulling out the water bottle saying, man, I found your bottle behind the desk, and it's a bottle full of liquor. And then we transition from that to him going back home doing the exact same thing, and his wife pointing out like, hey, you're not the only one hurting here. Like, you're not the only one doing this, but you still have to get yourself together here. As we see the frustration on his face from just her saying that, and then we transition right to a scene that is fitting, that he's attempting, as you pointed out last episode, we know technology wasn't the judge's strong point here. So he's drunk out of his mind, telling Tal, hey, I need to see this video with Abby and John Edwards, which has Tal confused because he's like, when did she meet John Edwards? And then we see the joy over the judge's face as he said, nah, her bear, John Edwards. Like, I need to see the video. And we hear the concern from Tal over the phone. But amazingly, none of the kids ever showed up here. But we hear the concern over the phone for Tal has for his dad. What did you just think about these three setups, from his trusted colleague telling him this, his wife telling him you need to get yourself together, down to this scene with him and Tal, where we can clearly see he's at rock bottom here?
I would love, and I don't think I've ever asked this, so I'm curious of what you think here. How do actors perpetrate being inebriated? The portrayal of him being completely wasted here is
spot on.
I mean, like, from the dialogue, the slurring, the repetitiveness, I mean, I couldn't be more convinced that they actually told him to get drunk to do this, because it's just that good. So this is just more of a continuation of what we say, at the start of this. Is just like we're seeing him rock bottom, and he's going to go through the waves, and we're truly going to see what his actions are and how it impacts the folks around him. And when you sort of have to be in the space with somebody who's clearly going through some sobriety issues. It is also interesting about how each individual deals with them. Some people kind of allow it. Some people don't know how to engage with it. Some people have commentary about it, but kind of go the other way. Some people even enable it in a way. I mean, then there's the folks that's going to hold the mirror or they say the lighter to the seat, which Uncle Jack it's not having that. So that's when I started to think like, well, who's going to be the one to turn this around? Who really has that pathway through to him to get to him mentally in order to snap him out of this? Because I will be the first to say, when you see somebody like this, I don't think it's a fair assessment to just label them as a drunk or they have a drinking problem. This is a trauma response to the max. And he's never, whether you lost him out or not, but whenever you lose somebody, that particular person holds that particular spot with you in your life. So because he's lost his baby girl here, you don't prepare on how you're gonna what's the next day gonna be, you know what I mean? So who's gonna be the one to be able to tap into him before it's too late? Because that's also the biggest thing. So we done seen the wife try, we done seen the work try to get involved, we done seen his son get involved. Who's going to be next? Which one of the other siblings, or who would be the person around him to be able to get him back on track? So that's why I was kind of at with this at this moment.
It almost felt at this moment like it needed to be a single-minded focus that will pull him out. Because again, you say it's a coping mechanism. That's the only reason he's drinking this much. Is the more I drink, the less I have to think about it. And we know Forrest Whitaker, being the utmost professional, I don't think he got drunk. Now, if this was Daniel Day-Lewis or Heath Ledger or Jeremy Strong, one of those guys who are method actors, they'd have got drunk out their mind because they could have said, I don't see a better way to play this role. Here with Forrest, I think we've seen this on Godfather Harlem when he played drunk before. It's the same thing. Like, literally the same face at that, which is crazy of him being drunk. Like, he knows this down, probably remember them college days and be like, yep, I know how to play this. Next up is the judge in his car as we see him on the phone calling the police. But we notice that he is, again, in the car, behind the wheel of a car. And then they pan out to show that he has had a huge accident. And the police are coming up upon him, asking him what's wrong. And he's just as belligerent as humanly possible. But then we see the power of the position that he's in. As his fellow judges say, we can cover up a DUI. That's not a problem. The problem is, though, your behavior behind this bench has to change. Because if it doesn't, then there will be consequences. And from there, we get the judge and Clarice visiting Abby's grave. And this is when we get the introduction of Uncle Jack in the episode. So without going into that detail, I'm just going to ask you, one, what you think about the progression they've shown so far and the conversation between the judge and Uncle Jack here, as Jack kind of, first the judge lays out that what he wants, like he wants to find these people, he wants them dealt with, he wants revenge, but Jack telling him, if you go down this path, there's no turning back. Like, this is something that's going to be permanent. Plus, I don't work with drunks. Get your act together. This is what you want to do.
This is again, Uncle Jack. If you watch Snowfall, this is Teddy to the T here. Very strict requirements to doing business. And in fact, Uncle Jack just came back from overseas, I believe, right? In doing business. Weapons business is not just weapons business. Sounds like weapons of mass destruction business over there. So to me, that tells me a couple of different things. Did he come back to pay his respects? Did he come back because somebody made the call because this is the person that they know can get him back on the path? Did he come back because he got the call from the judge himself? But nonetheless, because I don't think they explained that, right? He just
they kind of did. He came back to pay his respects because he missed the funeral.
Oh, right. He did.
He said at the beginning, he said, I'm sorry I missed the service. You know, I love you. I would have been there. So I think it's because he missed the service that he showed back up.
So he obviously had intentions of getting there one way or another. But to me, all I kept thinking was just like, I think we're about to really see Uncle Jack at the capacity of why he's revered as the most dangerous man on the board right now. So him coming back, and we already knew what the conversation was going to be, and it was a measure of justice or revenge. And I couldn't help but to get excited for the show, but ultimately, because we had already knew who did it, that revenge tag was like a tough pill to swallow. And I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but like understanding that this conversation, as much as they talk about, I'm not going to deal with a drunk, I also think having this conversation at the grave is definitely not a good playing field to have a well-sounded conversation of a decision of the magnitude that it would. Like, let's try coffee or something, but not here. Like this could be a little bit biased in the area where we may go. But nonetheless, I just think that I think you can start to predict on what was the next dominoes that was going to fall here.
Yeah. And then the next ones fall immediately as we witnessed a scene that seemed like it was out the blue at first of a random guy broken down on the side of the road. The police come to help him stunning the police officer in the most brilliant way humanly possible.
Dude.
With that battery trick. Like, that was brilliant.
In case anybody doesn't know, and I hope y'all do know, it's very simple. Red go to red, black goes to black. Unless you don't know, because some batteries do not label them, but either he knew or he stripped the indicators from it, but he flipped the battery.
Flipped the indicators so he wouldn't know which side.
No, I think they were bare. I think he flipped the battery in the opposite direction, and then they went in like that. So either way, I've never seen that. I've never seen it on a show at all, or anything,
or any film either that way that shows you electrocuting yourself.
Yeah,
that's what he did.
Would love to be able to talk about the planning behind that scene. That was brilliant.
Yeah, and then we go from there to him getting into the police station, taking the officer's ID and everything, getting all the information that he needed on the case, going down to the evidence room and getting even more information on the case. And then the following scene, we see a meetup between him, Jack, and the judge. Here, I love the beginning part of this scene between Jack and the judge, as you see here just how long their friendship is, as they're talking about school days and the things that they used to do then. But then when the guy arrives, well, first, Uncle Jack tells the judge, we know it's two people because a neighbor heard two people arguing right after the accident. But then the guy shows up and he says, my guy had the rest of the information and we have to go from there. Once he gives information to the judge, he tells the judge, this is your job. You do this for a living. You need to sift through all of these interviews and find out who's lying. What do you think about just the whole setup of this point down to that information being given to the judge?
Yeah, Uncle Jack said, listen, I did my part, now do yours. And I already knew, because of everything we just talked about the instant results, looking through footage, testimonies, all that good stuff, that was not going to be fast enough for him. Even to the point that when he did find out, it didn't even, like, I'm sorry, once he started to get a little bit of an indication, even with the potential boyfriend, love interest, whatever you want to call him, he didn't spark reactions in the way that I thought he would. He just kind of was just like, this doesn't, I don't know. To me, it just kind of felt like the moment he was looking at the folks and he was putting things together, it just kind of felt like, and in fact, it was the idea of like, even knowing, and even at this very point, this does not bring your daughter back. So knowing who they are, seeing that they're kids, seeing their relationships with them, is something that's just was what it's going to be. I mean, and in fact, the part that hurts the most is that I think him coming to the realization that their lives will go on. You know, they will get passes. I mean, even we'll talk about the guy in a minute, but even to a point where he's in college and, you know, he's having his, he's a Q dog. So he's on the yard. Like, he has a future essentially at this point, and your daughters were cut short. And although you spoke so you spoke so highly of her, because I'm not even about to try to roll that off my tongue. That's just it. That's her legacy. Is the potential and what she was able to do at this point. So I to me, I just felt like his reaction at that point wasn't satisfactory for him being able to have all the footage there and happen to do the work. I don't think he wanted to do the work. That's why Uncle Jack is involved, because he did not want this on his hands. He did not want to go out there and make this right. And man, we got some other stuff to talk about there. But yeah, I just don't think he wanted to do the work. He wanted this to either go away or for her to come back.
And he wanted someone else to deal with it. And that's why Jack made him go through those interviews. Because we see through the course of this episode, Jack is constantly attempting to change his mind. But he understood, if I make you go through these interviews, maybe you'll see these children as children. And maybe you won't want the vengeance that you're seeking here. And then next up, as we get to the point of him looking through the evidence with his wife, we see he pinpoints one person and one person only. And that's him being a father. He pinpoints the guy who she was talking to that night and saying he has to be the one. He did this to her. He had to do everything to her. He blamed him up and down, up until, which I think, again, this is the brilliance of his wife here, of them watching a video and her saying, go back to the white girl. And her saying, she's more emotional than anyone else on this video, but she's the one who's saying she didn't know who Abby was. Something is up with that. And then we see them put the pieces together that she's dating Javon. Those are the two people. These are possibly the people that committed the crime. What did you think about, one, the judge going through the footage, him blaming Marcus for everything up front, and then his wife being the methodical one, thinking it out like, no, go back to this person. Listen to what she's saying here. Why is she overly emotional when she didn't know our daughter?
I said last week that I felt that the potential boyfriend, love interest, whatever you want to call him, would fall victim to this. And I was that close to being right. And because of the response and how I reacted, I very much feel validated in that. The mom coming in, bringing that other perspective definitely was something I did not account for. But she was spot on. And I will also say too, regardless she was there or not, I mean, like, the judge is not in his right mind. He's acting he's reacting emotionally and not logically. And the mother, which is interesting, because I actually kind of take that back, because the mother is also very much acting emotionally.
She just extremely emotional.
Yeah, but she was just able to be logically here. So like, I guess it's just the balance here. So you gotta have the right person in your corner, I guess.
It's the difference between being a father who sees every boy who approaches your daughter as evil versus being a mom who's been a girl who's fallen in love with a boy and her looking at him and saying, no, he gave her her first kiss. Like, that's innocence. Like, he cared for her. You can just hear the way he's talking. He cared for her. Again, it's a different perspective because it's a woman's perspective versus the man, the father, like, nah, if you like my daughter and she turned you away or something, you had to kill her. And the mom like, no, that's not what you're witnessing here. Down to, again, also the white girl does stick out like a sore thumb, because I'd have went back to her interview 2 or 3 times. You are the only white person here. Something is up. Something is awry here.
Yeah. I mean, but they're in a diverse community. But I mean, her reaction in the testimony definitely sticks out. So
way too. She started crying the moment they told her she was dead.
Yeah,
and it's like, wait, you don't even know this person.
Yeah, but also too, like, you know, I kind of see this a little bit too, because while, like, whether you know this person or not, you are being brought in terms of questioning, and with her privilege, she may have never been in a situation like this ever before. So like, her response to things could be warranted, either being scared because of the situation or being scared because she was a part of the situation. But the boy, he felt very trained, very nonchalant about it.
That joint with no issue,
no problem. And it be them. That's the thing. You watch enough of these true crimes and murder mysteries, you be like, the person who committed the crime just all up willy-nilly in the audience of the funeral.
Yeah.
Like, there's no problem, or just crying like they really miss something. It's like, huh?
It's either one of the two, and that's what the mom picked up on. Like, wait a minute, you're either stoic and you act like, man, I'm sorry, but you know, I ain't really know that person. Suspect number one. Suspect number two is, I'm gonna cry my eyes out, and I don't even know who this person is. And it's like, why are you so emotional about this? It's got to be a reason why, beyond the tragic circumstances of the situation here. But next up, the judge tells Jack everything he's found out as they're just in his office and they're talking about the next course of plans. Down to Jack telling Judge, this is about to get a lot harder now that we had this information. And then in one of my favorite moments of this scene of Jack just saying, give me the bottle. This is just him. Basically, he's been sizing up Judge this entire time, looking, and then taking that bottle out of his pocket and throwing it into the fire again.
Did he
him
say,
accountable?
Did he say like, how did it get there or something? What was the judge's response? He said something hilarious.
And he said, "Oh man, it was just a little something. I forgot I had it." Something like that. And Jack paid him no attention. Still understand, but this is partially being a friend that's holding you responsible, but also understanding you're still grieving. Like this is something you're gonna obviously still do, and I wouldn't be responsible if I didn't notice that you're still going through this. But then following up is the investigator as they search for the car, and this is the biggest thing possible, is we see the limps that these rich people, black and white, and that's what I absolutely love also in this episode, because it wasn't just like the white family did this. The black family had money too. They fully understood certain things need to disappear, because if it does not disappear, we're going to get in trouble here. As they send the car to Philadelphia in a storage unit to make it extremely hard to find, but Jack's Jason Bourne is what I called him in this episode, finds exactly where everything is and pinpoints to them where to go to find the car. Before we get to the scene of them finding the car, what did you think about just from the prior scene between the judge and Jack as they talk about how hard it's about to get to this investigator who clearly I'm more interested in is if this guy's still alive and who the heck is he?
Yeah, more
at this point, he's figuring out everything humanly possible.
Yeah, more of this
him
guy
finding this out that fast.
Yeah, Jason Bourne to the team. I actually don't have anything to add to that. I mean, you broke it down, but Jason Bourne to a team. We need more of that guy. He's out here doing the work.
Next up, they get to the car, piece together that this is the car that killed Abigail, and then the most interesting thing happens, and that is Jack offering to take all this information to the police and saying, we don't have to go through with these plans. We have enough evidence. They'll get arrested. We could drop this off and it will be done with it. Or we do follow through with the plans, but they have to be killed 7 to 8 months apart from each other, so nothing draws suspicion that they possibly did this and we possibly came back for vengeance. I think I'll go to the next scene instead to talk about that, because the next scene is also pivotal here. And that is the judge going to visit the kids before making his decision here.
Visit the kids. Those were goodbyes.
Yeah. Well, no, I think he was going there to make a decision on what to do after what Jack said. Because when he went to go see Bethany, he saw that her life is in shambles. She's never recovered from that night. Down to working now at a supermarket. Like she's completely done. Versus Javon, who has, as you said, the psychopath here. He's living his life.
Yeah.
He a Q-Dog. He with Jedi Mike. They stomping on the yard. They doing all this other stuff with no issue at all.
He getting ready for Howard Homecoming. Like, he having a good old time.
Hey, Black Beach weekend coming up soon. He living his best life.
CIAA loaded up. Like, yeah.
What murder? Even having the conversation with the judge here with Javon, of him just asking, how are you doing? And him just being very nonchalant. Like, hey, man, by the way, I'm sorry for what happened to Abby. Like, showing no remorse to the judge whatsoever about anything that happened. And we see the judge take that information in, and yet we still see the judge go back and say to his wife, I think we should just send this information to the police. And then the real G of the family pops out and says, fuck that. They had their opportunity. They left our baby girl dying in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
Like, they had their chances to live their life. They had their chances to be correct. They chose not to. I want my vengeance here. What did you think about the complete setup from them finding out about the car, judge meeting the kids, and then Miss Garland coming through and having the final say so on what was going to happen to the kids.
Yeah. I mean, again, as I said, these church folk out here, he wants justice. She's like, no, revenge. You know, a kid for a kid in this matter. I was shocked.
Yeah.
She did not give me, I want blood on my hands. And I don't know if it's because she's not actually the one doing it, but I mean, like, let's just call it what it is. If this was some type of like, this was a true crime. Let me see. He would get life. Jason Bourne will probably get the seat. Uncle Jack will probably get he's an accessory, so he'll probably get 15. And then Mom,
all of them get 25 to life. It's conspiracy to commit murder for every single one of them.
Well, then she's definitely getting 10, 15. She's definitely in that conversation.
Oh no, she's getting time too. All of them are getting locked up. Like yeah. But she didn't care in this moment because this is the first time we see her being emotional about it.
Yeah.
Like we saw her being very stoic as the judge was breaking down. But here, once she has the information of who killed her baby, all that went out the window. All my mercy and all of that goes out the window because you all did what you did and you didn't care when you did it. And I think that's what you feel more than anything else. Because the moment she says they had their opportunity and they left our baby lying in the street to die, that right there told you exactly what. At that point, you knew that she wanted them dead.
Yeah.
And she only wanted them dead because she's like, you didn't do the right thing. So why should you be spared?
Yeah.
And I think that's the amazing thing this episode, because that back and forth was not foreshadowed. Ain't no way. I'd have swore up and down that nice little lady who had cancer later on in the series. I'd have thought she'd been like, say those babies. We don't need vengeance.
Yeah.
And she said, she's like, the Lord said vengeance is mine, but damn it, it is mine today.
We need to know her origin story because she might got some other bodies on her hand, man.
To go from current mother to Dr. Ock that fast lets you know she is not for play here. Yeah. But next up is we see the surveillance of the kids take place as we see them plot out everything humanly possible. I want to know whose decision it was to kill them in the same exact way that Abigail died, because that was never explained exactly who came up with that decision.
First, listen, the first thing I said with all of some of my favorite shows, the NCISs and the Criminal Minds, I said, oh yeah, they're about to have a good old time with this unsub here. They're gonna be like, oh, so they have a thing about hit and runs. That's their MO. That's all we know. Hit and runs for minors. That's their whole little profile here that we got. The first thing I thought was they have to open up an investigation about a serial killer out here at this rate. This is way too coincidental. I mean, I would assume they're all still in the same city, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, he just spoke at both of the funerals and whatnot. I mean, there has to be another investigation. Normally, there will be another investigation here, but I think we have to take it for what it is. The reach of power Uncle Jack has, because at this rate, this would be something on a federal level. Like they're going to be looking into this.
It would be an investigation if they would have done the opposite of what Jack said. And he told them it has to happen.
That's a strange little bit.
The reason why he says that is you have to give enough time for the police to declare one a cold case. So what happens is hit and runs happen all the time. It's the most common way for a lot of people to die.
Certain cities.
If you kill people months apart, they'll never put two and two together and say, we need to investigate 3 teenagers dying of a hit and run.
Man,
nope.
Yeah, listen to yourself, man. They have had serial killers who have hit twice in a month and didn't come back for some years. And the first thing I thought was like, well, did they get arrested? Did they got some other charge connected to them? You know,
because serial killers have an MO. So it's the same. It's almost all serial killers kill the same way. Not all, but you know, if you have a pattern, you have a pattern. A hit and run ain't never a pattern.
Like could be at this rate.
Well, with Uncle Jack, it's clearly a pattern here. But if someone was to get hit hit tomorrow and die, if it happened 3 months from now, they are not going to investigate it. They're going to be like, well, matter of fact, we know they don't. DC, the little Wendy's intersection that used to be off of New York Avenue, you know how many people was hit?
Yeah.
And they kept on going. Nobody ever investigated it. They was like, dog, we need to change this intersection. There's too many people dying.
And I think it's even worse now. That whole area
much
is
worse
confusing.
now.
Yeah, I gotta go around there
but again,
later.
That's what happens in those situations instead of actually investigating it. But right after this, the investigator proceeds as we see the deaths of both Bethany and Javon. And then we get to the following scene, which is Jack informing the judge that everything has been done. And we finally see him realizing none of it mattered anyway. As he goes to Abigail's room and he completely breaks down. What did you think about just the scene of that realization coming over the judge that no matter what he does, his daughter will never come back?
I think, first of all, the filming of the scenes, first of all, kids getting hit by two nice muscle cars was something interesting. Mustang, and I think the other one was a Monte Carlo or Grand National, one or the other.
So clearly Dom is the person you need to be looking for here.
You already know where I was getting at with this, but you know, Dom would never do this. He would never, ever, ever knock the family.
If you hurt his family,
yeah, you're right.
Never know what he's willing to do.
He did Willie that one dude in Fast Five. Yeah, forget that black guy name.
Laz Alonso from the Boys?
Yes. I forgot the character that clearly Laz. But like, and also Letty got hit by a hit and run. Oh no, it was just an accident. She was left on the side of the road. But okay, nonetheless,
Han that got hit with a hit and run.
No, just in the car, right? All right. Either way, I thought that the reactions to the kids being hit was interesting as well too. All the way, I mean, everything he kind of profiled about them all the way to their final moment. She was accepting of a fate that she knew was coming. He was more shocked because he felt untouchable. So I think she was battling the grieving, knowing that she was going to be the maker because, you know, whatever. And then him was just kind of like, nah, not me. This can't happen to me or whatever, but whatever. Them going to the room to memorialize the room is also a measure of grieving as well, too. Because they thinking that by keeping the room the way it is, that will keep her alive or she will come back. So I think the idea of the job being done, definitely, as you noted, had nothing to do with the fact that two kids just were murdered, but the fact that like this changed nothing. Two deaths for no reason. Your daughter's not walking through the door, keeping the room as it is, even with the bear being on the bed, it's not going to make everything back together. So it's that realization that's way, way, way too late in this case.
Yeah. And in the following scene, we get the funeral scenes. First, him going to Bethany's funeral. And we see here, he doesn't speak when it's a white funeral. So I don't think, I'm not sure they do services at white people's funerals. But like, he's just there at the gravesite. And we see the senator notices that he's there. And he's happy that the judge showed up to the funeral here. And he's like, why wouldn't I show up? My daughter just went through the exact same thing. And then we get to the big one, which is Javon's funeral. And this is him deciding, as the preacher says, does anyone else have any kind words for the family? And he gets up and gives a speech that is possibly one of the most disrespectful speeches I've ever heard at a funeral. Because during the entire time, he's literally talking about their son killing his daughter and about him taking away his daughter's future, but runs it back around to say, I know how you're feeling because of what happened to me. What did you just think about this and the release he got? Because this is the first time he talked about Abigail. And it felt like he got a release of joy after this sermon here.
Yeah, and I also think it didn't help his wife. She didn't get the same reaction to that. I think it might have made things worse for her. But I will tell you, and it's never been in this sort of frame, but there is nothing worse than somebody speaking at a funeral and making it about them. Yes. It's literally the word, and I don't know why it's so common. If the whole idea of a funeral is to be able to, as a measure of celebration of life of somebody, you can talk about your experience with that person, but you talking about yourself, like even comments like, I don't know how I'm gonna go on and how I'm gonna get through this. It's like, hold on, man. I know you're going through something, but we are supposed to be talking about the positives of this person
Of that person's life, not your life.
You know?
Yeah.
And the fact, like, yeah. So before he even got into the details and the metaphorical messages that he was making in there, I'm like, oh, I already know this isn't going good. And then I was like, oh yeah, he's going for it. I was like, and like you felt like the encouragement or the momentum building. You just felt like he's like, oh yeah, he not done. He about to cook up a little bit more in this here. Yeah, it was wild. It was wild. And I just I couldn't believe that's the route he took. But I think the only thing I will say about that is I'm curious to think after, I guess I'm curious to think about after he got that off, where does that put him at next? Now that he got it off of him, is he back? Is he standing back? Go ahead.
You see it in the next scene. He is smiling.
True.
He is happy. He back on the bench being the best judge in the world. Is because a weight was lifted off of his shoulders. And the reason why I think the parents let him get that off and the church cheered for him is because, unfortunately, in a lot of, and I don't want to categorize it as just black churches, but I go to black churches.
Yeah, so you can reference, right?
Yeah, exactly. Grief from both angles can always be celebrated. I lost my child, you lost your child. We're here together. It's like a camaraderie that happens because of the grief.
You can definitely talk about community there. There's nothing self about community.
Yeah. And he did a smart thing because he kept on talking about their community. Keep in mind, all of them are in the same neighborhood. And he kept on bringing that up over and over again during the speech while he was throwing dirt on their son's grave by talking about him killing his daughter. He still made sure to connect it back to that so they can have that moment to grieve together, because it's a parent who understands what it is to lose a child. So when all of that is off him and that weight is gone, we see him back on the bench being assertive, being the perfect judge, up until he gets a call from Uncle Jack saying, it's something I need you to do.
Yeah.
And the judge goes, exactly what is it that you need me to do? And he's, without saying it, he told, you know exactly what it is. And this was a favor for favor. And this is where it kind of comes into play. Is this the arrangements that we have not heard about yet?
Yeah. So really quickly, when he gave him like the package of evidence, I thought that was the arrangements, where it was like, because it tied who they were who they were connected to, their parents, the parents of power, and how they were able to cover up the evidence and how that essentially could break a system. So that's when I first saw them hand that over.
Oh, that's when you thought that was the evidence. No, that was just for them to. So
I know. Until this moment, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. But at the same time, that evidence is still out there. So
keep in mind, that evidence was also only pertaining to their murders. So that's when Uncle Jack told Tao, oh, that book don't matter. The book told everything and it has everything in it. And he's still acting like, oh, that scrapbook don't matter at all. Yeah. That is not the arrangements. Focus on what the arrangements are.
Yeah.
But then they kind of wonder, is whatever this is that Uncle Jack asked the judge to look into, is that the arrangements? But if that is the arrangements, Uncle Jack would have known elements of it. But as we get to the present time, he's very adamant. He doesn't know anything about the arrangements.
Yeah.
So could this just be the start of whatever it is?
Yeah, and I'm obviously
he wasn't privileged to anything else.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, him being shocked about a deal for a deal was definitely also not a reaction I was thinking. Like, he felt like, oh, I can't believe he did all of this, and now he's asking for something. Like, the audacity is like, really?
I murdered 2 people for you.
Yeah, cold blood, you know? And now I'm asking you to ensure that a case is thrown out. An intellectual property case that could be monumental to whoever the person he said, their money, and then their employees. And when he said his employees, I'm like, is this like some subcontracted work that Uncle Jack is working with, where he's like, this affects me essentially? Is this like some overseas funding that I'm getting that if this crumbles, this affects me? So we don't know the depths of where does this web of things reach. But Uncle Jack is obviously doing this because there's personal interest for this. So
definitely.
Is it a problem that you can not get up there and rule a certain way or two? I mean, y'all do it all the time anyway. What's just another day of saying like, no,
and that's how Uncle Jack treated it. Like, you do this every day, B. You'll be fine.
Yeah,
I murdered 2 people for you.
Let's not.
Guess what you gonna do?
It's a big deal. Like this, just get this done, and you go that way, I go this way. That's it. That's all we need to do here, you know. So
now, amazingly, I don't believe they mentioned the person who the favor is for. Yeah. He just says a friend, and because he does that, do you think this is the beginning of the judge's relationship with Jensen?
Yes, 1,000%. Yes, it is. Absolutely. So, you know, we hear about that case that he was in ruling of, so I think it's all going to connect. It's all going to connect.
There you go. So, your final thoughts on episode 8. Now that we only have 2 episodes left, and they gave us the prologue episode already, giving you the backstory of everything with Abigail and also possibly setting up what these arrangements can be. What do you think about the close of this episode? And what do you think about what we're going to see in these last 2 episodes?
Finally, we're going to get the details on the arrangements. I got that coming next episode. And I also think the next 2 episodes are going to be very linear too. I don't think we have means for many flashbacks at this point. So I look forward to...
Well, you got to go to flashbacks to when it is revealed exactly what the arrangements are. It's gonna be a flashback to that.
True. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I would assume that's next, and then everything else goes into current time, and
maybe nothing with the kids flashbacking because there's no need at this point.
Yeah,
to flashback to them, but you got to flashback to when they first find out what the arrangements are, because clearly his wife knows fully about them.
Yeah,
so we got to get to the point where he tells her, "This is what's needed, and this is going to be whatever the arrangements are moving forward." I think that's where you'll get that flashback. I think episode 10 will probably be the most linear episode along with 8, because by that point, I think you're right. They're going to get exactly what the arrangements are in episode 9.
Yeah.
So, people, let us know what you think about episode 8. Let us know what you think about the setup between Jack and the judge here, as we see the friends working together here to murder 2 people. What did you think about Miss Garland and her assertiveness this episode? It's something we've not seen in this series so far. Maybe we're seeing the reveal of exactly where Mariah gets it from. When she was on. It was no doubts about it. And do you think this episode kind of gives us hints onto what the arrangements are? But you can check out this recap review after the episode airs this Sunday. Or, as I always say, watch us first, then go back to watch the episode so you know exactly what we're talking about. Either way, as long as you watch, comment, like, subscribe, we all for it. Again, peace, people, for tuning in to another recap review of The Emperor of Ocean Park.